An item template is a really useful way to speed people up when it comes to adding a particular thing that you need to use in many of your projects. The file of instructions example that we're using, or something that's more specific to what you do. But imagine if there were substitutions that needed to be made that aren't in that list of built-in substitutions, like the time and the project name. You could just put placeholders in the file and ask people to fill it in, or you could put up a wizard that would ask them some questions and substitute in what they've said, or use their answers to drive a decision about whether or not to substitute something in. So if they checked a certain item, you would include a certain piece of code, for example, in the generated code. We're going to do a very simple variant on this wizard just so that you can see how to hook it in and in the limited amount of time that we have available. So I'm going to create a new project, and it's time for C# to have a turn. So I'm going to create a class library in C#, and I'm going to call it Greeting Wizard. Okay, so you see here that it's made a class called Class 1 for me. I don't really care for that name. I'm going to rename it to Greeting Wizard Info. I find that sometimes the designers and the various helpers don't like it if I have the same name over and over again, so greetingwizard.cs and greetingwizard.proj and so forth. So it asks me, hey, you're renaming the file, do you want to rename the class that's in it? I sure do. So now I have a class called Greeting Wizard Info. Now this is a class library, and it's going to implement the interfaces that make it a wizard, so specifically the iWizard interface. Now the iWizard interface itself is in fact in another assembly, so I'm going to need to add a reference, and I'm going to need to add quite a handful of references, and there's a little bit of a trick as well when you go to add these references. I'm just going down to the M's here. I'm looking for Microsoft.Visual Studio. Here we go, and you'll see 3 on my machine. It might be less on yours, called Template Wizard Interface, and rather confusingly to a certain extent, they all have the same version here, and they're all for the same version of the .NET Runtime. But if you look over here at the path, this one says Visual Studio 8, this one says 9.0, and this one says 10.0. I have the beta installed on this machine. It's important to choose the right path here. I want the Template Wizard Interface that goes with Visual Studio 2008, so that's in this 9.0 folder. Okay. I also want to add some references to the env DTE, and again we have to look at that path. I'm holding down Control, so I'm multi-selecting references. I want env DTE for 9.0. I want the guy whose name has 8.0 in him but is on the path for 9.0, and I want the one whose name has 9.0 in it and is on the path for 9.0. So I'm adding these 4 references, and these are now listed here for me. I'm going to add a using statement. Visual Studio Template Wizard. It's just going to mean a little less typing. And this class, Greeting Wizard Info, is going to implement the iWizard interface that's in that namespace. I have this little blue symbol. Choose Implement Interface iWizard, and it will generate, let's just unpin this, all of the members of the iWizard interface. And in order to help me remember to deal with them, it puts in these not implemented exceptions, but since these all return void and don't have to do anything, it's okay for us simply to remove these throws. Now these are the items that you saw on the slide, not particularly in the order that they happen. When we start running, as we go through each item, should we even add it? We only have the one, so we don't have any logic. I'm just going to say return true. And finally, when our run is finished. I'm going to use run started to put up a form and ask the user some questions, and then I can put those answers into the substitution dictionary that's going to be used in the instructions file. So let's add a form. And and I'm going to call it step 1. So step 1 of my wizard. You might imagine somebody might have multiple steps in their wizards. And I'm going to need a button and a text box to type in. And a label so people know what's going on. So the label, I'm going to write extra instructions. And the button, I'm going to make done. And let's just give the text box a better name. We'll call it extra. You should probably resize the window. All the wizard steps should be sort of wizard sized and wizard proportions. I'm going to just leave that for you to deal with. And I'm going to come in here to write the handler code for what happens when people click the button. So I'm going to have this string variable called extra instructions and a very boring function to get them. Now this is available as a property of the form. When you click the Done button, I'm going to set that variable to, not surprisingly, the text in the text box. And I'm going to close the form. So now over here on Run Started, what I need to do is put the form up and get the instructions from it. So I'm going to declare an instance of it. New up an instance of the form, and then call its show dialog method, so it'll come up modally. And then I have a replacements dictionary object available to me, which represents these things that are being substituted in, some of which are populated for me automatically. And I'm going to add, you can make up the string of your choice. Seems to make sense to me to say extra. And the value that I want to put in there is the return from this get extra instructions method that I put onto the input form. Now, to use this item that I've added into the replacements dictionary, I need to edit the instructions.txt, and it's important to make sure that you edit the right copy of instructions.txt, because at this point there are a great number of them floating around. I'm going to go to the My Exported Templates folder, and this is the expansion of the zip file, and I'm going to drag that copy into this Visual Studio and simply add extra instructions from the wizard, $extra, okay, and save that. Now, at this point, that's just a text file randomly on my hard drive in the exported templates folder. It isn't going to change the behavior of Visual Studio at all, but I have another change I need to make elsewhere in the XML, so I'm just going to leave this for now and build my project. Make sure that I have no compile errors. Good.